Love doesn't ask for permission, and it certainly doesn't check your age first. When a younger man falls deeply for an older woman, one unexpected sentence often exposes the feelings he's been trying so hard to hide. People often assume that age is the first thing a younger man notices when he meets an older woman. Society has repeated that idea for so long that many believe it without ever questioning it. But when genuine feelings begin to develop, something surprising happens. The number that once seemed important gradually loses its influence, and what takes its place is something far more meaningful. Instead of being drawn to her age, he becomes deeply attracted to the way she makes him feel whenever she's around. Unlike attraction that's based only on appearance or excitement, this kind of connection grows from emotional experience. He begins noticing qualities that are difficult to describe but impossible to ignore. Her confidence isn't loud or attention-seeking. It's calm, steady, and authentic. She doesn't constantly search for approval because she has already learned the value of knowing who she is. For a younger man, that quiet confidence can feel incredibly refreshing in a world where so many people are trying to prove themselves. Another quality that naturally captures his attention is her emotional stability. Every relationship experiences challenges, misunderstandings, and stressful moments, but an emotionally mature woman often responds differently. Instead of allowing every disagreement to become a battle, she communicates with greater patience and perspective. She understands that protecting the relationship is usually more important than winning an argument. That emotional balance creates an atmosphere where he feels less judged and more understood, making him want to spend even more time with her. Conversations also begin taking on a different meaning. Rather than talking simply to fill silence, he finds himself genuinely looking forward to hearing her thoughts. Her life experiences give her a unique perspective, and he realizes that speaking with her leaves him thinking long after the conversation ends. She challenges his ideas without making him feel small. She listens without immediately trying to criticize him. That combination of wisdom and kindness becomes something he quietly values more than he expected. As the connection deepens, he notices another unexpected change within himself. Around her, he doesn't feel the same pressure to impress that he might feel elsewhere. He becomes more comfortable being honest about his fears, ambitions, and uncertainties. Instead of pretending to have everything figured out, he finds himself opening up because her presence makes vulnerability feel safe rather than embarrassing. That emotional freedom is something many people search for, regardless of age. It's important to understand that this attraction isn't about believing older women are automatically better than younger women. Every person is unique. The point is that when a younger man genuinely falls in love with an older woman, the qualities that hold his attention usually have very little to do with age itself. He's responding to emotional maturity, self-awareness, compassion, and the sense of peace he experiences in the relationship. Those qualities can create a bond that feels deeper than the excitement of simple attraction. You may also notice that the way he describes her begins changing. Instead of focusing on physical appearance alone, he talks about how comfortable he feels around her, how much he enjoys their conversations, or how different she is from anyone he's known before. These descriptions reveal that his feelings are becoming emotional rather than superficial. He's no longer fascinated by novelty. He's becoming attached to the person behind it. Over time, even outside opinions begin losing their influence. Friends may ask questions, strangers may make assumptions, and society may continue focusing on the age difference. Yet the more emotionally connected he becomes, the less those judgments affect him. That's because people naturally become more confident in relationships that genuinely fulfill them. When someone consistently brings peace, encouragement, and emotional security into your life, outside criticism starts carrying much less weight. Another meaningful shift appears in the way he prioritizes time with her. It no longer feels like spending time with someone older. It simply feels like spending time with the person who understands him best. The age gap gradually fades into the background because emotional connection becomes the defining feature of the relationship. What once seemed like an obvious difference slowly becomes one of the least important details. Looking at the bigger picture, love has a remarkable way of changing what people notice first. In the beginning, he may have been aware of the years between them, but as genuine affection grows, those years become less significant than the laughter they share, the conversations they enjoy, the trust they've built, and the peace he feels in her presence. Without realizing it, he stops seeing an older woman and starts seeing the one person who makes him feel understood in a way no one else has. And when that happens, age no longer defines the relationship, connection does. As his feelings become stronger, his conversations begin changing in ways that even he may not notice. At first, the words seem ordinary. They don't sound like dramatic confessions or carefully planned declarations of love. Instead, they appear naturally during everyday conversations, almost as if they slipped out before he had the chance to think about them. Yet beneath those simple sentences lies something much deeper. They reveal that she has quietly become one of the most important people in his emotional world. One of the first changes is that he begins seeking her opinion more often than anyone else's. He might ask, "What do you think?" before making an important decision. Or he may tell her about a situation at work just to hear her perspective. On the surface, it looks like he's asking for advice. But emotionally, something much bigger is happening. Her thoughts have started carrying unusual value because he genuinely respects the way she sees the world. He isn't looking for approval from everyone. He's looking for understanding from her. Another subtle shift appears in the way he shares his daily life. Good news doesn't stay with him for long before he feels the urge to tell her. Whether it's a promotion, a successful project, or even something small that made him smile, she often becomes one of the first people he wants to share it with. That's rarely accidental. Human beings naturally reach out to those who hold the greatest emotional significance in their lives. The desire to include someone in your happiest moments is often one of the clearest signs of emotional attachment. The same pattern appears during difficult times as well. Instead of carrying every burden alone, he starts opening up about stressful days, disappointments, or moments of uncertainty. He doesn't necessarily expect her to solve every problem. Sometimes he simply wants her to listen. Her presence becomes comforting, and her voice has a calming effect that helps him process emotions more clearly. Without realizing it, he's no longer facing life's challenges entirely on his own. He's begun leaning on the relationship for emotional support. You may also notice him saying things that reveal just how much her presence affects him. A simple sentence like, "My day was better after talking to you," or "I was thinking about what you said earlier," may sound casual, but it carries significant emotional meaning. Those words suggest that she remains in his thoughts long after the conversation ends. She isn't just someone he enjoys speaking with in the moment. She's someone who continues influencing his emotions throughout the day. Another revealing habit is how often he looks for reasons to continue conversations. Even after the original topic has ended, he introduces another question, remembers something she mentioned earlier, or sends a message that isn't really necessary. These aren't random attempts to fill silence. They're quiet efforts to keep the emotional connection alive because hearing from her has become something he genuinely looks forward to. As his attachment grows, appreciation also begins showing up more naturally in his language. He may thank her for listening, tell her that she helped him think differently, or admit that he feels calmer after spending time with her. These aren't exaggerated compliments designed to impress her. They're honest observations that slip into conversation because they're becoming part of his everyday experience. He may not yet call it love, but his words already reflect how much her presence means to him. Something equally important happens beneath these conversations. He becomes more comfortable revealing thoughts he normally keeps private. Instead of staying on safe, surface-level topics, he begins discussing personal goals, childhood memories, fears about the future, or lessons he's learned through difficult experiences. Emotional intimacy doesn't begin with grand confessions. It begins with the growing confidence that someone will understand you without judging you. His willingness to share these deeper parts of himself is another sign that the relationship has become emotionally significant. Of course, it's essential to remember that one meaningful conversation doesn't automatically prove deep feelings. Context and consistency matter. Anyone can express gratitude or ask for advice once in a while. The real difference appears when these behaviors become part of an ongoing pattern. If he repeatedly turns to her during both joyful and difficult moments, consistently values her perspective, and naturally includes her in the emotional rhythm of his daily life, those conversations reveal much more than friendship alone. As everything begins coming together, his words start painting a picture he hasn't consciously intended to create. He may never sit down and say, "I've become emotionally dependent on you." Yet through countless ordinary conversations, he quietly communicates exactly that. The questions he asks, the stories he shares, the comfort he seeks, and the appreciation that slips into his voice all point toward the same truth. She has become more than someone he admires. She has become someone whose presence changes the way he experiences life, and those everyday words begin revealing a love he's still learning how to understand himself. Sometimes the most meaningful confession isn't planned at all. It doesn't happen during a romantic dinner, in the middle of a dramatic speech, or after weeks of rehearsing the perfect words. Instead, it escapes during an ordinary conversation when emotions briefly become stronger than caution. That's often why a simple sentence can reveal far more than someone ever intended. When a younger man's heart truly belongs to an older woman, one phrase that often captures this emotional shift is, asterisk, "I don't know why, but I feel different when I'm with you." At first glance, these words may sound simple. In reality, they often carry a depth of meaning he hasn't fully processed himself. Notice how that sentence begins. He says, "I don't know why." Those 5 words are incredibly revealing because they suggest he's trying to make sense of emotions that don't fit his expectations. Perhaps he never imagined himself falling for an older woman. Maybe he believed he had a certain type or pictured a completely different future. Yet despite all of those assumptions, his feelings have developed anyway. His mind is still searching for explanations while his heart has already reached its own conclusion. The second half of the sentence is just as important. But I feel different when I'm with you. This isn't simply a compliment about enjoying someone's company. It's an emotional observation. He's acknowledging that her presence changes something inside him. Maybe he feels calmer. Maybe he feels more confident. Maybe conversations become easier, or silence becomes more comfortable. Whatever the exact experience may be, he's recognizing that being around her creates emotions he doesn't usually experience with other people. One reason these words often slip out unexpectedly is because they're based on feeling rather than logic. Logic can be carefully controlled. Feelings are much harder to manage. During a meaningful conversation, a quiet evening together, or even a simple everyday moment, he suddenly realizes that she's affecting him in ways he can't easily explain. Before he has time to filter those thoughts, they become spoken words. That's why unplanned honesty is often more revealing than carefully prepared declarations. Another important detail is that this sentence isn't focused on external qualities. He isn't talking about appearance, age, or excitement. Instead, he's describing an internal emotional experience. He's explaining how he feels when he's with her. That shift matters because genuine love gradually moves attention away from what someone has and toward how someone makes you feel. Emotional connection becomes the center of attraction, replacing the more superficial reasons people often associate with romance. You may also notice that after saying something like this, he sometimes appears surprised by his own honesty. He might laugh, quickly change the subject, or even try to minimize what he just said. That's because admitting powerful emotions can feel vulnerable, especially if he isn't yet certain how they'll be received. Yet once those words have been spoken, they can't be taken back. They've already revealed a truth he was quietly carrying inside. As his feelings continue growing, similar phrases begin appearing more naturally. He may tell her that talking to her feels different, that he feels unusually comfortable around her, or that she understands him in ways no one else seems to. Individually, these comments may seem small, Together, they form a consistent emotional pattern. He's repeatedly expressing that the connection stands apart from his previous experiences, even if he hasn't yet found the courage to call it love. It's also worth remembering that these words aren't magical on their own. People sometimes say emotionally meaningful things in passing without building a genuine relationship afterward. That's why the words only become significant when they're supported by consistent actions. If he continues making time for her, seeking her advice, opening up emotionally, and prioritizing the relationship, then the sentence becomes more than a passing remark. It becomes an honest glimpse into the emotions guiding his behavior. Looking back over everything we've explored so far, a clear progression begins to appear. First, he stopped focusing on her age and started valuing her presence. Then his everyday conversations began revealing emotional dependence he didn't even recognize. Now, those hidden feelings have reached a point where they occasionally escape through simple, unplanned words. He may not yet be ready to say, "I'm in love with you." But when he quietly admits that he feels different whenever she's around, he's already revealing something incredibly important. He's acknowledging that she has changed the way he experiences life, and sometimes that realization arrives long before he's ready to fully understand what it truly means. Many people assume that a younger man is naturally drawn to excitement above everything else. They picture him chasing adventure, unpredictability, and relationships filled with constant highs and emotional intensity. While that stereotype may sound convincing, real emotional connection often tells a very different story. When a younger man genuinely falls in love with an older woman, his priorities begin changing in ways that surprise even him. Instead of constantly searching for excitement, he starts valuing something much rarer: emotional peace. This shift doesn't happen because life suddenly becomes less exciting. It happens because he discovers that feeling emotionally safe is far more fulfilling than living through endless emotional ups and downs. Around her, he doesn't feel pressured to prove his worth every single day. He doesn't feel like he has to compete for attention or constantly guess where he stands. That sense of stability becomes deeply attractive because it allows him to relax and simply be himself. One of the first things he begins appreciating is her consistency. Her emotions aren't controlled by every temporary frustration or misunderstanding. She communicates with greater patience, listens before reacting, and doesn't create unnecessary drama to test his commitment. Over time, he realizes how rare that kind of emotional maturity really is. The relationship becomes a place where difficult conversations can happen without everything turning into conflict. And that changes the way he thinks about love itself. Another meaningful difference appears in the way she responds to his imperfections. Instead of expecting perfection, she understands that growth takes time. When he makes mistakes, she doesn't immediately define him by those moments. She encourages accountability while still offering understanding. That balance allows him to learn without constantly fearing rejection. As a result, he feels more accepted than judged. And acceptance creates an emotional bond that excitement alone can never provide. Her confidence also plays a powerful role in this transformation. She isn't constantly seeking reassurance about her value or trying to compete with everyone around her. She knows who she is, and that quiet self-assurance influences the entire relationship. Rather than feeling responsible for constantly proving his action, he experiences a partnership built on mutual trust instead of endless insecurity. That emotional environment gives him the freedom to focus on building the relationship rather than defending it. Conversations begin changing as well. Instead of staying focused on surface level topics, they naturally move toward deeper discussions about life, personal growth, family, dreams, and future goals. He finds himself looking forward to these conversations because they leave him feeling inspired rather than emotionally exhausted. She doesn't simply entertain him for a few hours. She helps him think differently, understand himself more clearly, and approach life with greater perspective. Those experiences gradually become more valuable than temporary excitement ever was. As the relationship grows, he also notices how much easier it becomes to be emotionally honest. He doesn't have to pretend he's stronger than he feels or hide every moment of uncertainty. When he's facing challenges, he knows he can speak openly without immediately being criticized or misunderstood. That emotional safety encourages vulnerability, and vulnerability often becomes the foundation of the deepest relationships. He begins realizing that genuine strength isn't about hiding emotions. It's about sharing them with someone who handles them with care. At the same time, his definition of attraction quietly evolves. While physical chemistry remains important, it no longer stands alone. He becomes equally attracted to the way she listens, the calm she brings into stressful situations, the wisdom she shares without trying to control him, and the kindness she consistently shows. Those qualities create a level of admiration that goes far beyond appearances. They make him respect her as much as he desires her, and lasting love is almost always built on both. It's important to understand that choosing emotional security doesn't mean life becomes boring or predictable. Healthy relationships still include laughter, adventure, romance, and spontaneous moments. The difference is that those experiences are built upon a stable, emotional foundation rather than constant uncertainty. Instead of wondering whether the relationship will survive the next disagreement, both people feel secure enough to enjoy the present while confidently planning the future. By this stage, his heart has quietly reached an important realization. The qualities he once believed would make him happiest aren't the same qualities he now values most. Peace has become more attractive than chaos. Consistency has become more meaningful than unpredictability. Emotional maturity has become more appealing than temporary excitement. Without intending to, he's discovered that what he truly needed wasn't someone who made life louder. It was someone who made life feel calmer. And that realization brings him one step closer to understanding why this connection feels unlike anything he's experienced before. By this stage, his feelings are no longer visible only through occasional words or quiet emotional moments. They begin showing up in the way he lives. What once sounded like simple admiration slowly transforms into consistent actions, and that's where the true depth of his emotions becomes impossible to ignore. Anyone can say meaningful things in the right moment, but when those words are followed by reliable behavior, they become far more than conversation. They become evidence of genuine emotional commitment. One of the clearest changes is the amount of intentional effort he begins making. Spending time with her is no longer something he fits into whatever free space happens to be left in his schedule. Instead, he starts creating that time. Even during busy periods, he looks for opportunities to see her, call her, or simply hear her voice. These moments aren't driven by obligation, they're driven by desire. Being close to her has become something that naturally improves his day, so he quietly rearranges parts of his routine to make it happen. Another noticeable difference appears in the way he pays attention. He remembers details that many people would overlook. Perhaps she casually mentioned an important meeting, a family event, or something she was worried about weeks earlier. When the day arrives, he asks how everything went without needing to be reminded. That kind of attention isn't the result of an exceptional memory alone. It's a reflection of emotional investment. People remember the details connected to those who matter deeply to them. His protective instincts also begin appearing in subtle but meaningful ways. Protection isn't about controlling her choices or treating her as though she can't take care of herself. Instead, it shows up through genuine concern for her well-being. He checks whether she arrived home safely, notices when she's unusually quiet, offers support during stressful moments, or steps forward when he senses she could use help. These actions aren't performed to impress her. They happen naturally because her happiness and safety have quietly become important to him. As his attachment grows, consistency becomes one of the strongest signs of all. His kindness doesn't disappear after the excitement of the early stages fades. He continues showing respect, following through on promises, and making an effort even when life becomes busy or complicated. Many relationships begin with intense enthusiasm but gradually lose momentum. Genuine love works differently. While the excitement may become calmer over time, the effort remains steady because his feelings are rooted in commitment rather than temporary emotion. You'll also notice that he begins thinking in terms of we more often than me. Future conversations naturally include her without him having to force the idea. Whether he's discussing travel plans, holidays, personal goals, or everyday activities, he starts imagining her as part of those experiences. He isn't making dramatic promises about forever. He's simply revealing that when he pictures the future, she already has a place in it. That quiet shift says more than many grand romantic speeches ever could. Another meaningful sign is the trust he gradually places in her. He shares thoughts, worries, and dreams that he doesn't casually discuss with everyone else. He allows her to see the parts of himself that aren't always confident or certain. This kind of emotional openness requires courage, because vulnerability always carries the possibility of rejection. The fact that he's willing to take that risk shows how deeply he values the connection the two of them have built. Of course, it's important to keep everything in perspective. No single action proves love by itself. Anyone can remember a birthday, send thoughtful messages for a while, or make an impressive romantic gesture. The real difference lies in consistency over time. When these behaviors become part of his everyday character rather than occasional efforts, they reveal feelings that continue growing instead of fading. Perhaps the most beautiful part is that he rarely keeps score. He doesn't constantly remind her of everything he's done or expect praise for every thoughtful gesture. Many of his efforts happen quietly because caring for her has become a natural expression of how he feels. He's no longer trying to convince her that she matters. He's simply living in a way that reflects it. Looking at the journey so far, every stage has led naturally to this point. First, he stopped noticing the age difference and became captivated by her presence. Then his conversations revealed an emotional dependence he couldn't hide. Honest words escaped before he was ready to explain them. He discovered that emotional peace mattered more than temporary excitement. Now, those feelings had become visible in his daily actions. His choices, his priorities, and his consistency all begin telling the same story. Long before he confidently says the words, his life has already started proving what his heart decided some time ago: that she isn't just someone he admires, but someone he genuinely doesn't want to imagine life without. In the end, every meaningful relationship reaches a moment where appearances, expectations, and outside opinions become less important than the connection two people actually share. For a younger man who has genuinely fallen in love with an older woman, this realization doesn't usually happen overnight. It develops gradually through countless conversations, shared experiences, quiet support, and the emotional security he discovers in her presence. Eventually, he understands that what he's feeling can no longer be explained by curiosity or admiration alone. It has become something much deeper. Early on, he may have questioned his own emotions. He might have wondered whether the age difference would create problems, or whether other people would understand the relationship. Friends could have offered opinions. Family members might have asked difficult questions. Society often has expectations about what relationships should look like, and those expectations can create doubt even when genuine feelings are present. For a while, he may have tried to balance what his heart was telling him against what the world expected him to believe. Over time, however, real experiences begin replacing assumptions. He notices that the happiest parts of his day often involve talking to her. When something exciting happens, she's the first person he wants to tell. During difficult moments, her voice becomes one of the few things that genuinely calms him. Instead of feeling judged, he feels understood. Instead of feeling pressured to become someone else, he feels accepted for exactly who he is. Those experiences slowly become impossible to ignore because they're based on reality rather than stereotypes. Another important shift takes place within his thinking. He stops comparing the relationship to other people's expectations and starts asking a much simpler question: how do I actually feel when I'm with her? The answer often surprises him. He feels respected. He feels emotionally safe. He feels inspired to grow. He feels heard. Most importantly, he feels at peace. Once those emotions become consistent, they outweigh the opinions of people who have never experienced the relationship themselves. As this understanding grows, confidence gradually replaces uncertainty. The conversations that once felt difficult become more natural. He no longer feels the need to explain every detail of the relationship or justify why it matters to him. Genuine happiness has a way of creating quiet confidence. When someone consistently brings out the best in you, defending the connection becomes less important than simply living it. You'll also notice that his focus changes from what makes the relationship different to what makes it meaningful. The age gap becomes a fact rather than the defining feature of the relationship. Instead, he pays attention to the trust they've built, the laughter they've shared, the difficult moments they've overcome together, and the person she's helped him become. Those are the memories that shape lasting love, not the number of years between two people. Perhaps this is why the words that slipped out earlier carried so much emotional weight. When he quietly admitted, "I don't know why, but I feel different when I'm with you," he was already describing a truth he hadn't fully understood. At that moment, he couldn't explain why the relationship felt so unique. Now, after spending more time with her and allowing the connection to grow naturally, the answer becomes much clearer. It was never about age. It was about how profoundly she changed the way he experienced love. That realization influences every part of the relationship moving forward. His effort becomes more consistent. His commitment becomes more intentional. His appreciation becomes more obvious. Instead of questioning whether the relationship should exist, he begins focusing on how to protect something that has brought genuine happiness into his life. Love stops being a possibility and becomes a decision he quietly makes through his actions every single day. Of course, every relationship still requires communication, trust, mutual respect, and shared values. Love alone doesn't remove every challenge, and no relationship becomes successful simply because feelings are strong. But when both people are willing to grow together, support one another, and build a partnership based on honesty rather than fear, the things that once seemed like obstacles often become far less significant than they appeared in the beginning. Looking back at everything we've explored, a clear journey unfolds. He stopped seeing her age and started noticing her presence. His conversations revealed an emotional dependence he couldn't hide. Honest words escaped before he fully understood their meaning. He discovered that emotional security mattered more than temporary excitement. His daily actions began confirming what his heart had already decided. And finally, he reached the realization that changed everything. He hadn't fallen in love because she was older. He had fallen in love because she made him feel understood, respected, peaceful, and completely accepted. Once that truth became impossible to deny, the age difference faded into the background, leaving only the connection that had quietly transformed both of their lives.